I have devices like a Proxmark that I can put on my wrist, and I can walk within about 3 feet of you, scan your badge, and clone it. I'm an offensive security specialist. I'm a hacker.
Practices that he's employed so far are practices that I'd expect from somebody that watched Khan Academy for a week, not somebody that's been working on a project for 8 years, claims to, worked at Blizzard and been around game devs, or at some certain points claimed that he's a game dev.
If you're going to be putting forward something that you want to start a conversation to eventually become legislation, and these are the reasons for it, not only can I not agree with the initiative, but I can't agree with you. And I think that the tactics that you're using here are really disgusting.
Whoa, this guy had major confidence.
How's it going, guys? PirateSoftware is a creator on YouTube who many of you may recognize from your short feed, and you may have watched a few of his videos and left thinking either, wow, that guy worked at Blizzard, he must know what he's talking about, or why is this guy so smug? One or the other. And for years, that's how it would remain. While Thor continued to craft an alternate reality around himself and his fans, many others began to notice cracks in his behavior, and what began as simple controversies over faking his voice and being bad at World of Warcraft grew into PirateSoftware being so despised, he might have changed video games as we know it forever. Thor's career has been filled with controversy, from accusations of cheating in puzzle games to boost his ego, to being accused of being an industry plant, but most of the negativity would remain under the surface. That is until PirateSoftware had an infamous meltdown over hardcore World of Warcraft. Being an ex-employee of Blizzard, PirateSoftware felt that he was one of the most knowledgeable mages out there, so in the middle of a game, he and a few of his streaming friends were doing a raid, in which PirateSoftware notices that someone on his team has overpulled, and without even a second guess about it, PirateSoftware roaches out. He leaves his entire team to perish, and his teammates, obviously frustrated about this, called Thor out for bad practices and questioned his skills, knowing that he could have did something to help out but chose not to, so he didn't have to make a new character. And if you watch close enough, you can see a small smirk on his face when he leaves his team. He knew what he was doing, but for some reason he decides to argue it tooth and nail, and everyone in the world knows that this is such a simple thing to get over. Okay, you accidentally roached out on your team, everyone have a laugh about it, you make a Twitch emoji, make a little bit of money off of it, and everyone has a nice laugh. But not PirateSoftware. He's not going to take a hit to his ego at all. I mean, he practically created this game. His dad is the one with no life. How could he not be the best mage of all time? And what's funny about this is the way Thor reacted to his teammates, like, oh, this is no big deal, why are you running your mouth to me? You know what, I'm not gonna take this from you peasants.
Heal him. Yeah, you just heal me, just come back a little bit.
What's on me, sitting bear form?
Snuppy, just run.
I can help a lot, yep.
Pirate, why are you walking, bro?
What are you talking about? Why am I walking? Look at my mana.
This is savageable, come on, man.
Just kill the mastiffs.
Innovate.
Innovate the healer, kill the mastiffs. We got this. In the sense of...
War something?
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the mastiffs, one shot. Okay, we
more on the way.
The mastiffs can be ice novas.
Dead.
Now we're gonna wait.
Nusara?
No.
They called run,
came up after,
I
like,
ran, and I was out of mana. I don't know what the hell they were expecting, dude. That does not make any sense. No. They overpulled 2 polls and the boss. Like,
fuck.
No.
Oh, no.
I mean, the regular ogres can still be polyed. We just had the boss and like 5 mastiffs and 2 ogres. We could have polyed 1 ogre, killed 1, and then walked it out.
Yes, literally, just even an ice nova would have been enough.
You guys pulled that when I had...
You instantly ran out, bro. You instantly ran. You didn't even look
As
back.
much as you're angry right now, of course I ran.
Don't be angry at all.
You overpulled 2 packs. You overpulled 2 packs and a boss. I had 1,400 mana left. I had to spend all of that mana to try and put it on Blizzard to save you guys in the first place, and nothing left. You weren't paying attention to party resources, you overpulled, and you weren't paying attention to where the boss was. That's not on me.
But there wasn't even any information. We are just yapping about useless stuff. Do you see my point?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I called it the boss coming though, but at that point, maybe it was too late to move back.
Like, you're telling me like a rank 1 mage would not at least to try Frost Nova there? Like, you're not even in danger.
Oh, I'm 100% in
try
danger.
Frost Nova. Like,
100%.
no, you're not.
No, 100% danger. When your shot color says run, it's time to run, you run. That is how that works. You were the shot color, you called for run, I ran.
I'm not a shot caller.
And I was out of mana.
Actually, I'm a noob, bro. I
You
think I
called
have
the
way
shot.
less experience than you have.
Oh, dear God.
And I can still see that I can at least use a Frost Nova there. Or at
Okay,
least try
then go
something.
roll a
You were
mage
the
and do
first
it.
person that ran away and didn't even look back. Literally.
This
You
is the
didn't even
second
say
time.
anything.
This
You
is
could
the
have at
second.
least said, like, the boss.
You're just
going
gonna talk over me? Is that what we're doing now?
Well,
We're
I'm
just gonna
giving you
talk
my
over me?
point.
Is that all? Is that all
I'm
we're
just
doing?
giving you my points.
Okay. You done giving your point? You good?
Yes. I'm done.
Okay. Cool. You go roll a mage then. See you around. Insane shit. No. That is outrageous, dude. You can't blame me for that shit. You make a bad poll, you make a bad call, that's on you, not on anybody else.
When something similar happened to him, he proceeded to have an egotistical rant about how those are rookie mistakes, and if that shit happens again, well, somebody is going to have to lead the team because Pirate is too good of a player to be dealing with that. And after the clip of PirateSoftware began to go viral, it led to him getting the reputation as a roach, which we discussed just a second ago. And if you didn't know, in the World of Warcraft community, a way of saying a guy left his team to save his character is calling them a roach. And like we said, he could have laughed about it, but no, he doubles down and says it's not his fault. Nothing is ever his fault. He was left with no choice because of his team's ignorance. But the most hilarious thing about PirateSoftware raging out on his team, as it turns out, PirateSoftware was the one who engaged the boss, which led to his entire team getting wiped out. When confronted with this, PirateSoftware plays it off as no big deal. Even if he did overpull, he was justified instead of, just saying he was wrong. And it's even more laughable at the fact Thor was ready to kick one of his teammates for that. But when he did it, it's all jokes. And you're not going to kick me. I made this game. Did you know I worked at Blizzard?
Inside of my own guild, I accidentally pulled something with a spell called Ball Lightning, and you can see it kind of off in the back there. I thought somebody else in the group pulled this, and I was really pissed off, and I blamed the rest of the team. And the reason why I had done that is because earlier on in the fights, people just kept pulling random shit. And then I accidentally pulled random shit, and I looked like a dumbass because I was an angry dumbass. This was entirely my fault. And later on, when we reviewed the footage, we realized it was entirely my fault, and then I apologized to everyone involved. Later on, we ended the raid, and we moved on to other content.
One event that's often glossed over after the roaching incident that I like to bring up is when PirateSoftware noticed that a small indie creator had used his likeness, and by likeness, it was a roach with the wizard hat that Thor wears. This sent Thor into a rage, and a man who's all about indie game development, protect the indie developers at all costs, immediately contacted a quote-unquote lawyer to harass this man into taking his game down, which initially Steam did, and the craziest part is, the meme was never a part of the actual build of the game. Nobody on Steam who purchased the game could see it. So Thor, without thinking at all, got so mad over people laughing at him roaching, which I have to reiterate, isn't that big of a deal. Only in PirateSoftware's desire to be perceived as perfect doesn't mean anything. Not only does this paint him as a thin-skinned hypocrite, but it lets you know that he can't view himself as a joke, no matter what. A small Easter egg in an indie game would have no consequences to Thor's character. Most probably wouldn't even get the reference, but through the Streisand effect, he brought more attention to it than it ever would have had. But the best part of the story was that Thor didn't have an American lawyer look into this case, which led to the lawyer misinterpreting the laws, which the small indie developer never even broke, leading to the game getting restored and more attention than it could have ever received, which is a running theme. PirateSoftware goes scorched earth over minor issues, and if he did nothing or not be extremely unlikable and egotistical in his responses, nobody would really know or pay attention, but through his own bad behavior, he ends up helping the deserving parties in the long run. It's actually amazing.
Hey, Kronos, we have to file a legal complaint against that dude earlier. I'm gonna pause this for a moment. There was a dude earlier today that went onto Reddit and said that he was using my voice in a video game, showed a bunch of videos of it, and then put that game up on Steam. A lot of people in the thread told him not to do that, that would end up being a legal problem for him. He did it anyway. So I filed a DMCA claim, and he has now filed a Counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so. So I'm going to send this over to Kronos now because he is a lawyer in copyright law. That is his job.
I showed one video of a possible build or a concept and put it on Reddit. The game, that concept or what's on my machine was not on Reddit. There's no build of him ever on Reddit or on Steam. There's no data in my game of him on Steam. There's no active build with him on it.
It turns out that not only does PirateSoftware struggle with playing games, but also at making them. A controversy surrounding one of the games that his company, PirateSoftware, has produced, or in this case, multiple alpha builds and false promises, that he's finally going to solve. Don't worry, in a decade, this game will be out for sure. This is way back before he was exploding onto the scene, telling the entire internet how smart he is and right, because he is a genius that can never be proven wrong, guys. This dude should work for the government or something. Wait, he already has. What a talented, smart man. It's just too bad, like his Kickstarter for his game Heartbound, his ego is inflated and yet again got ahead of his actual capabilities. In 2016, when the first alpha build for his game dropped, large creators like Jacksepticeye were praising the game and the potential it had to be the next Undertale. But that's all it remained, was potential. PirateSoftware to this day has yet to release the full game, and in my opinion, I think all of the initial praise got to PirateSoftware's head. From what we can understand, this is the first big project that he's been in charge of. If he and his team would have stuck to the initial goal, the game would have probably been released years ago, but they tried making it bigger and destroyed everything. This kind of reminds me of Hello Neighbor, a game released to tons of fanfare, potential to be the next huge horror game, and that got to the developers and they kept thinking bigger and ended up taking years to drop an official release, and by the time they did, most of the hype died down. The game ended up being convoluted and the advanced AI we was promised was dumbed down to the point characters easily trapped him and faced the real challenge of the game, the level design. But there's one huge difference between PirateSoftware's game and Hello Neighbor. Hello Neighbor had a full release and a sequel, both not very well received, but they happened. PirateSoftware in a similar time frame has produced 2, maybe 3 chapters of the game and says he's put a considerable amount of time in the ARG puzzle to keep his skill up for puzzle competitions he participates in, and I promise you, those people who paid money for it back in 2018 would most likely want a game instead of you just sharpening your puzzle skills, PirateSoftware.
This is Potato Hat Security, our old Team Potato with a whole bunch of guides for DEF CON challenges that we've solved throughout the years. My name on here is Jason Thor Hall. I go by the middle name of Thor for a reason, because it is my middle name. Brett Beerhouse is the person that I got to go run with. He's a good buddy of mine back from the Blizzard days. DEF CON 22 was the first challenge that we actually went up against. And we didn't win, but we beat it. There was a shitload of puzzles that went along through this, and we had a blast doing this and learned a lot about cryptographic methods. I didn't know anything at the time when I first stepped into this arena back in DEF CON 22. That was back in 2014. After this was over, I went home and I tried to learn as much as I possibly could about cryptographic methods, hiding information, and reading books like this one called Code, The Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software by Charles Petzold. Awesome book, shitload of methods in it. I have a ton of books like this now because of this. And I went home and started making my own on a website called potatoplaid.net. Made it with Brett. It's actually defunct now, but it had a ton of our own custom puzzle challenges on it. Then we went back to DEF CON 23, and we teamed up with a team called Council of 9. After doing really well in the first challenge in 22, they wanted to have us on the team, and we agreed to join them, and we won. I got to write up this entire write-up this year as well, and we solved a bunch of cool shit together. One of the ones that I really had a blast working on was specifically the audio one, where I got to dive into DTMF using specifically Audacity to visualize the information. I love this. These types of things are really awesome. So whenever I play a puzzle game and I know that there's going to be cryptographic methods involved, I eat that shit up, dude. And if you're wondering if I actually did go to that, here's the badge for it. DEF CON 23. It's a radioactive badge that was actually obtained through winning that puzzle challenge that year. On the back, you can see that there's a Lichtenberg figure, which is hit by plasma to create a small lightning configuration across it. There's also another puzzle on the back of this that was solved by CryptoK on Twitter. It's a running key cipher, and he built a way of cracking certain running key ciphers. After that, we went back at DEF CON 24. And we won again. At DEF CON 25, 5, there was no badge challenge. The normal cryptographic challenges we usually do wasn't present there because Lost, the one who runs those, didn't go. So we did instead a telefreaking challenge, which was really, really fun. And I didn't realize it was going to be there. There was a guy who ran up to me and he threw a badge in my lap and he said, "You dropped your badge and ran away." And it was for the Ellingson Mineral Corporation, which if you know hackers, you know what that's from. It had a phone number on it. I called it and I was like, wait a minute, this is something. And I brought it back to the team and then we started cracking on it. We didn't sleep for about 72 hours and we won. This is the black badge for DEF CON 25. Since Lost wasn't there, they made gold coins, which isn't as aesthetically cool, but it is still solid gold. So, work on that I talked about earlier in this video has a massive cryptographic challenge in it. And I'll give you an example of one of the puzzles that I built for this. And yes, all of these puzzles are built by me. Right here, I gave them an image of a whole bunch of different squares of lettuce. I didn't tell them what it is. There's no other information for them. It's just images of lettuce. If they laid them all out in a row, it actually creates a strip of 0 through 9 squares, which means this is a grid of numbers. That grid of numbers doesn't go over 26 at any time, so because of that, it actually comes out to letters. Good, this operation is complete. Proceed to lettuce squares. And the next puzzle is lettuce squares. But there's other harder puzzles in this as well. If we go up here and we find, where is it? Truncated. There it is. Truncated was one of the ones that I gave them where I just gave them an image. This image is a picture of a zipper, and that's it. The zipper is actually a zip file, and inside is a WAV. That WAV is called Celestial Body.
Not only did he for some reason try to brag about being a puzzle-solving genius, but also let on to his fans that he's so good, one year the convention decided not to hold a competition, only to be a ruse to get Thor and his friends a secret mission only he can solve to boost his ego. But he also tells his audience, who's been waiting over 8 years for a full release of a game that you held a fundraiser for. There's people who's been waiting that long and used that time to create an ARG puzzle that only a portion of the player base is going to be able to solve or take the time to. And a lot of people blame the game being in development for so long on Pirate's streaming schedule and making videos, which is probably true, but there's a lot more factors that have to do with the ego of PirateSoftware causing such massive delays in release.
The indie game that I work on. People are currently review bombing this. They're very upset. And I can understand why in some of those cases, I haven't worked on the game for the last year. I could have communicated better this entire time though, and that's completely on me. I'm a dumbass for not putting out more announcement posts and releasing information to you guys to let you know that what was going on, and I was stressed the entire time and acting like a fool. With that in mind, I've started putting out updates on this game again. We actually put the first one out on January 19th, 2025. I made an announcement out to the Discord about this on that date saying that we'd be moving to monthly update builds. Everybody was really excited about this and they're quite happy with it. I then put out a video talking about what was going on and why this all happened. People seem to really like this. It's sitting at 4K likes on it. It's got about 93,000 views, and most of the people inside of the core community were really excited about the prospect of the game coming out now. And we have it all listed in timestamps for everything that's going on there and why we're doing all of this kind of stuff. With that in mind, this led to the review bomb, but it didn't stop me from working on it. On February 1st, I released the first patch, just like I said I was going to. We put out the patch notes for it, I made another announcement on the Discord, and I plan to make the next patch on March 1st. In fact, I work on it all the time. I was even showing it off on stream earlier. This is part of the new environment that I'm putting together to be able to get this out to the rest of the public on March 1st. There's a lot of dialogue in here, and it's the end of a chapter, so there's a huge amount of stuff that I have to do. Talk more about ARGs and puzzle mechanic stuff later. So with all of that in mind, if you're still upset at me about this, I get it. For those valid reasons of not communicating and not putting out information and not putting out updates to the game, I understand and I hear you, and I'm sorry for that. For the other amount of posts that are on there, there's quite a lot of them that you'll find inside of those reviews that aren't even about the video game. They'll put things in there like Maldavia's Fig Tree, which we discussed from the first part of this video, or complaining about me talking to Asmongold, or saying Mana Gem from World of Warcraft because they still haven't let that go, or all the other shit that goes on in there. It's all of the allegations all of the time, and because of that, I had to lock down the Steam forums to stop people from talking about this stuff because it's incredibly obnoxious.
For someone who sees himself as a voice for game devs, PirateSoftware struggles with developing games. For years, he was one of the most popular people who made video games on YouTube. I mean, the guy worked for Blizzard. Did you know he worked for Blizzard? So most people assumed that he was good at his job, and with Blizzard's early history of producing amazing games, he was able to use that to propel himself to the top of YouTube, and more importantly, a figure that could affect the general public who doesn't know the ins and outs of the gaming industry, but assume Thor does, so they'll follow along when he makes heinous claims like he did did with the Stop Killing Games initiative that we'll get to here in a minute. And it's not just that Thor is using his platform to sway opinions. Any larger creator can't help that, but it's the way PirateSoftware does it in a very vitriolic, spite-filled manner that riles up his audience. But it would be learned that despite his accolades, Thor isn't much of a game developer. Big shocker there, and his code has a lot of mistakes, and I know nothing about code, but a YouTuber by the name Coding Jesus has a history of dissecting codes of games and seeing what's right and what's wrong. To give a small breakdown of his findings of PirateSoftware's coding, he couldn't find much because PirateSoftware for a game developer hasn't shown much game developing on stream. He would discover through his small findings that PirateSoftware has a lot of issues in his code. Coding Jesus describes something an intern would be doing, such as having code that could take hours of backtracking if you're to mess it up, and code that only PirateSoftware could understand, which led a lot to speculate how a man with 20 plus years of experience, who also worked for a company who at the time he worked there had a great reputation, be coding so poorly. Especially when he views himself as a man who speaks for all game devs. He's also said he's the Bob Ross of game development, but he can't code. And the question goes even deeper, because how could Thor be making these simple mistakes, such as coding a game in a way that only he can understand, when he supposedly worked on projects that had hundreds, maybe thousands of other team members on them, where the code would need to be easily understood by everybody?
Usually when you work with a team, you can get away with poorer code because you won't need to deal with the consequences of that code as you pawn it off to somebody else and work on something totally separate. But as a solo developer, you need to deal with and contend directly with all the trade-offs that you make as you make those decisions while you code your game or your project or your whatever. In other words, every decision you make will either make life easier for you or harder for you down the line. As technical debt accumulates, you bear the entire burden of that debt, which slows down development. And it's kind of ironic because the same people that are trying to make excuses for poor code are the same people that actually play the game and are expecting features to be delivered. I don't care if his code's poor in the sense that it doesn't impact me directly. Yeah, I might care from a technical perspective to try to reconcile his game development experience or his game industry experience with who he claims to be and what he produces, but I'm not going to play his game. I don't care for his game. And the same people that do care for his game are the same people that say that it's okay for the game code to be slop, when in fact they're waiting on those same features that require the game code to be clean in order to develop and do so quickly. The practices that he's employed so far are practices that I'd expect from somebody that watched Khan Academy for a week, not somebody that's been working on a project for 8 years, claims to, worked at Blizzard and been around game devs, or at some certain points claimed that he's a game dev. If he just came and said, this is what I produced, I learned game dev for 1 or 2 weeks, Khan Academy, I spent an hour or two every day, I'd say that's actually good progress. And that is that PirateSoftware is constantly portraying himself as this sort of expert authority on everything that's wrong about nothing, and uses all this hyperbolic language and associations when in reality, what he's tangibly produced is below what you'd expect from a junior developer or even an intern.
People call me the Bob Ross of programming, which I think is a pretty big honor because I like Bob Ross's stuff.
Now, Pirate himself also responded, and he got a bit hung up on the fact that my mouse had some variable highlighted, despite the fact that I never talked about that variable. It's actually quite funny because I refer to every variable other than the one that he referred to in his reply. I've got plenty of my other videos where I do a code review. I go into line by line the GitHub repository and break it down for my viewers, both saying what went well and what didn't go well and how can it be improved. But Thor didn't give me, or really anybody, the chance to do that with his code because all he does is share snippets and screenshots. You also shouldn't be representing an entire entity made up of health, position, maybe whether they're dead or alive, their ID, their inventory, as a number or an index into some array. That's not how you present character models or entities in game design. And I don't even need to be a game developer to understand that.
It doesn't take a hacker whose dad works at Blizzard to figure out why Pirate Software was so bad at coding. It's because he was a nepotism hire. His father was one of the first employees to ever work for Blizzard. He apparently was even responsible for helping the creation of one of South Park's most popular episodes, Make Love, Not Warcraft, even modeling the one with no life after him. So needless to say, Pirate Software's father was a huge part of Blizzard and definitely had some pull in the company, so there was some nepotism there, no matter what Thor would like to believe. Thor claims that his father was rarely involved with his work life, and to make a point, he cites a time when a supervisor asked Thor's father if he would like Thor to stop talking to him. Thor's father said no because of course, that's his son, which surprised the supervisor, which is just another thing Thor likes to do, is look at all the evidence provided and say, well, no, there's actually a very small hole here. Like a true ferret, he squeezes his way through it. And when anyone with common sense could tell you one supervisor not knowing about your two's relationship proves nothing except in one instance, someone was ignorant to the one with no life being your father.
He was the cinematic director for Blizzard for 23 years. He worked on the episode with Matt and Trey, and they turned him into a character. That's him. Yeah, that's actually him. Yeah. It's not a joke. That's not like a similarity. Like, that's him. This is his apartment. This is him. Even the guy that cosplayed my dad didn't know he was real, but no, he's a real guy.
And yeah, the public has an idea of what the Blizzard's office were like. Chaotic. I'm sure the supervisor had more pressing matters to worry about than your two's relationship. If Pirate Software would just admit that yes, he was hired off the merit of his father, more than likely, he was at least competent enough to run the program, so he was hired. But I think Thor believes if he admits that, then the image of him being a super coding genius would just wash away and no one would ever watch him again, which just isn't the truth. He's actually pushed more people away with the attitude of his. And every time he wants to mention that he works for Blizzard, it wouldn't be this code word to tell the audience to shut up. I'm the master of this subject, so sit down and listen. He could just be a regular guy who got lucky and worked for the company, and people would probably respect that, the humbleness of it. And if you did do some amazing things while he was there, people would respect that even more. You was a nepotism hire who actually proved himself. That's an amazing story, but it's not the narrative that Thor wants to show.
For those who don't understand the term, a Nepo baby is somebody who got their job only through nepotism, never accomplished anything in their career, and never did anything to deserve the position that they have. My father was the cinematic director for Blizzard for 23 years. He worked on basically everything going all the way back to the death and return of Superman and many other games, all the way up until now. And then he quit. He went off to Jagex, and he worked on old school RuneScape, I believe as a creative director of some kind. I only had help from him in order to do my resume. But you're probably not going to believe me to say that, so I'm going to let him say it.
I remember one time he had, his boss had come to me because he came to me to apologize that one of his people talked to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, Thor came up and was talking to you, and I don't think that's appropriate and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. I go, just so you know, I'm going to keep talking to Thor when he comes and talks to me because he's my son. This was 2 years after he worked for this guy, and this guy did not know.
So funny thing here, he actually got the timeline wrong. That was 4 years into my career.
That Thor was my son, and that it's okay for Thor to come talk to me. You know, but it was in public. It was in the quad at work. It's just, but it's like, no, he can talk to me anytime. Just like anybody else at Blizzard could come talk to me.
For those who don't understand what's going on there, my own boss didn't know who my dad was. It's really hard to be a Nepo baby when the people who control your career have no idea who your connections are.
Roaching out on World of Warcraft may have been what had people starting to notice the egotistical nature of Pirate Software, but what truly broke the entire internet and subsequently the mask Pirate Software likes to wear was the Stop Killing Games initiative. A few months back, Pirate Software went on an absolute crusade against the simple initiative, claiming that where it may look promising to the public, for the devs, the people who build and grace the ignorant public with their creations, it was actually a very, very bad thing. So bad that it may stop devs from making live service games entirely.
As written, the language is too vague, it doesn't solve the root issue, and it creates a litany of new issues. And that's a problem. That's the major issue for me. Yep. The Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. The way that they're going about it is using very vague language that makes it so that even live service games could be caught in this net, which means every multiplayer game gets caught in the net. Stop Killing Games comes from the guy, live service is a scam. This is not based on vagueness. It is their intention to have all games to be updated to be single player, even if it was an MMO originally. Do you have a source for that information for me? Because I'm going to be real with you. If that's the case, all of this can eat shit then. I drop the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. If the intention is to turn all live service games into single player games, they can eat my entire ass. The whole thing.
A kill switch, essentially. It's a form of planned obsolescence.
No, it's not a form of planned obsolescence. It's called the game no longer being profitable and we turn it off.
Where publishers are destroying games they've already sold to you.
No, we're turning off servers that are no longer viable for a game that is no longer making money. Not just publishers either, developers as well.
But keeping your money. And this is...
Of course we keep your money, because you bought the experience, you experienced it, and then the game was over, and eventually the community dies, and we turn the servers off.
It's all preventable. Some people don't understand that.
It is not preventable. You can't play World of Warcraft as a single-player game.
I've compared this before to studios from a century ago burning their own films after they were done showing them.
That is not the same as World of Warcraft servers going offline after the game stops making money.
This would also apply to free-to-play games that contain microtransactions.
What? We want your free-to-play game that contains microtransactions to be playable indefinitely in a single-player setup in case your studio doesn't make enough money to support that free-to-play game with servers.
Because if you purchased a microtransaction as a good, then the game is made unplayable, well then you just lost your goods.
No, you had control of it over the time that they were on the servers, which is why it's part of the EULA and TOS for those games. You have access to those assets for the time that the game is online and in service. It is a multiplayer, server-side video game. My idea is shit, but it's easy to digest, so politicians are going to push it forward. I am very smart.
And this doesn't require them to do much at all. And unless it involves gambling or protecting children, politicians generally don't care about video games.
Politicians don't care about the subject matter, so they just want the easy win, and it's going to let us push it through, regardless of if it's good or not. Man, this is not the W he thinks it is.
So this isn't a big...
Remember all the things that I said this was about that's really dangerous? He's listing them for you.
...consequence to them or most of their constituencies. EU law is already unclear on a lot of this practice anyway.
Because there's no precedent.
We would be making it easy for them to settle it.
No,
it falls in line with other consumer practices.
If this goes through, not only is it going to be a shit show, it's going to be hell to repeal. God, this is bad. Okay, I'm going to be 100% real with you. I don't need to see a damn other word. He's clearly displayed all of the take on this. This would absolutely be targeting live service games. And it's specifically trying to get pushed through in a disingenuous manner because they're targeting politicians that know nothing about the field. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. 100%. That's not stop killing games. That's start killing games is what that shit stands for. No, that's awful, dude. No. You're going to kill the entire live service industry by doing that. Under the guise of player ownership. By trying to make it into a free win, and it's not. That's awful, dude. No. Eat my entire ass.
After raging about the initiative, even slandering the creator of the initiative for no real reason, and going on to have an obvious bias for the corporation, citing multiple times how the profit outweighs the customer enjoyment, who already paid most likely $60 to $80 for a game, but who cares about that? It's about the money the corporations could get. PirateSoftware would go on to fumble even harder when pointed out how wrong he was, such as using WoW as an example. Even though it's exclusive to memberships, you have to pay for the game. I don't think there's a way to play WoW without paying, so it wouldn't be affected. A clear ignorance of what the entire initiative stood for. So the creator of Stop Killing Games, Accursed Films, decided to try and have a dialogue with PirateSoftware, asking him to at least address the points correctly, because yes, a veteran of the industry, master puzzle solver, knots enthusiast, didn't even bother to understand the points correctly. But Accursed Films would find that PirateSoftware didn't just ignore his request or acknowledge it and dismiss the idea. He was enraged by the fact that Accursed would even dare question his thoughts. This pushed PirateSoftware to the point where he told his entire audience he would be actively going against this initiative, which backfired tremendously. Through spite of PirateSoftware's egotistical behavior, many became aware of the initiative and liked the ideas, because yes, once you purchase a game, you should own it and be able to play. Allowing fans to host servers after the devs give up allows a game to exist far past when its lifespan should have ended, and many people agreed with this pro-gamer stance, including YouTubers like Moist Critical and Josh Strife, who voiced their opinions about the situation, and a common ground both Josh and Moist held was the fact that no matter what was said, even if proven wrong, PirateSoftware would not back down from his stance, leaving them both confused and done with the conversation, as there was no chance of going anywhere with it. But surprisingly, a lot of the community wouldn't know that Moist and Josh Strife were still annoyed with PirateSoftware, since PirateSoftware himself decided he was going to put out a tweet saying between him, Moist, and Josh Strife, they hashed out all of their problems. But that was the opposite of the truth. Nothing was solved, in fact. Things were more confusing and frustrating than before the conversation happened. In fact, PirateSoftware spent most of the conversation blaming Josh Strife and Moist for sending their rabid fans after him and creating a whole lot more drama than he needed, basically blaming them for the hate he's receiving. It's almost like PirateSoftware can't accept any responsibility for anything in his life. Obvious mistakes he's caused, he'll blame on anything else he can, and the worst part is, I think PirateSoftware truly believes he's the man who could do no wrong, so if he's getting criticized, well, it must be for some arbitrary reason outside of his control, and he's done this for a long time. But when he did it to channels equal in size to his, even bigger honestly, the other fan bases are going to recognize that a valid point is being presented to you, but you're just denying it for no other reason than you don't want to be wrong. And honestly, it's a good thing that he did. It made the Stop Killing Games initiative reach its goal and have a fair shot of being taken seriously by lawmakers in Europe, which it wasn't even close before this all happened. And if this change was to happen in the EU, it would most likely affect the entire world. So I guess thanks for that, PirateSoftware. Even though you have no idea how to create a game, your code's bad, you may have, through pure ignorance, changed gaming forever. I guess congratulations.
Let's see. I've gotten a message. I got a message from Ross, who's the person behind the Stop Killing Games initiative. This is Ross, the guy from your video you responded to at 10:24. Based on your response, I think there's a combination of values clash and there's a misunderstanding on much of what we're asking for. For example, WoW would likely be exempt from this measure since it's considered under law as a true service. Likely is the problem that I have with your statement there. There were many other misunderstandings in your video. It's clear that you hate the initiative, and I doubt I would change that. That is correct. I would encourage you to at least hate it for what it accurate is. I do. We obviously have very different perceptions of what's likely outcome of this. I think those details influence that. That said, we also have a values clash. You state repeatedly that a game being permanently disabled is not a problem. It is not. A live service game is meant to end one day. There's nothing wrong with that. This is where we very clearly disagree. You're actually the most high-profile person I know that is adamantly against what we're doing. Cool. If you're interested, I'd be fine with having a discussion with you on where we could at least clarify things, but your choice. I don't think I want to do that. And the reason why is this. It is because specifically your video that made me not interested in wanting to talk to you. I'm going to be honest with you. If the person running this initiative has those beliefs that he just stated by his own admission, I don't want him running that initiative. I would rather somebody else handle this. I would rather have somebody else put forward something like this, because that kind of reasoning at the core of your values, that's used car salesman shit. I can't align myself with a person that is doing that. That's really gross, dude. Overall, it was actually quite positive. The analytics on it show that people really think it's a good idea. There's a huge amount of like ratio, and I received hundreds of comments from developers thanking me for putting it out because they can't speak publicly while they're at a business or a job elsewhere. A lot of the times, major companies will fire you if you are speaking out of turn and cause a PR disaster for those companies. And since this is such a popular thing among players, most devs aren't going to say anything to you. So I am.
A common occurrence I found with PirateSoftware, besides not being able to take accountability for his own mistakes, no wonder him and Ludwig are friends.
Just to be clear, that is dangerous. That's not good. That's not good. That's dangerous.
Let's up those numbers!
That's not good. That's not good.
PirateSoftware has an image of itself in his head, and we all do, but where most of us can understand when we slip up, do something dumb, we can laugh at ourselves. Pirate can't do that, and not only can he not view himself as someone who can't make mistakes, he wants you and me and everyone else to view him in that light as well, and for a long time, he was able to craft and mold that image of himself. I think like a lot of you, I saw some of his clips, watched, assumed he knew what he was talking about because they weren't topics you knew a lot about and moved on. But when you're on live stream for so long making so much content, you're going to slip up, and it was speculated and with a lot of evidence that Pirate uses a voice changer to make his voice deeper than it actually is.
I'm HB Duran for Video Game News Source, and I'm here, guess where? With the games, of course. I'm here with Thor, founder of PirateSoftware. How's your show been so far?
It's actually been amazing. It's our first time out here at Denver Comic-Con, and there's so many people, and they love the games, so it's been awesome.
So speaking of games, what do you have for us today?
So we have Champions of Breakfast, which is a twin-stick shooter that we made in 24 days from concept to release on Steam. Blew up. It was really, really awesome. And that game is pretty difficult, so if you're into really hard arcade games, that's the kind of thing for you. And the other one is Heartbound, which is a more story-driven RPG. And we've been working on that for about 6 months. We put it up on Steam Greenlight. It got rank 1, so it was massive success. And then we put it up on Kickstarter, and it got funded in 24 hours, and then ended up with 400% funding. So people really, really like the game.
People's voices change over time, and they do this at different ages as you go through life. On top of this, streaming and talking for 12 hours a day doesn't make that any easier or better. Outside of this, you can actually catch me on a bunch of other content creators' channels. I went and did a tailgate party with Esfand in real life.
I'm going to tell you right now, Dix is good. Yeah. As you can see. Yeah, no, I mean, these people are everyone lines up for Dix.
I was in the middle of a forest with Bao.
A lot of mushrooms, like, you can only determine what they are by touching them or smelling them or tasting them.
I've been in the Streamer Awards, giving speeches.
Since 2016, actually. So, like, I cut it during that, because I worked for the government that made me cut it, and then I just never cut it before that either.
I also got caught by NMPLOL right out there on the street.
Nick, my chat wanted me to say hi.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah, they're freaking out.
The level he goes to show himself as this supreme being to everyone else is ridiculous. In Pirate's defense, he claims that he went through a second puberty around 30 years old. Now, a lot of people think that's ridiculous. All men's voice usually deepens as they get older. I wouldn't refer to it as a second puberty, and I think if Pirate's voice has gotten deeper since this interview, age is more likely the case, not a second puberty. And after tons of backlash, PirateSoftware even backtracked and said that it was from age. But a funny thing I noticed in the examples he gave us, the second of the three, his vocals sounded very similar to the interview he did early in his career, but the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. I think along with age deepening his vocals, he also purposefully manipulates them to sound more like an authority figure. Just another way Pirate makes himself feel special and different from everyone else. And I don't think this is the most egregious thing PirateSoftware has ever done, far from it, but it just gives you an idea of what his character potentially is. Another example of how PirateSoftware likes to use his audience to stroke his ego and be perceived as some sort of genius hacker who can't be touched upon his throne. I want you guys to listen to this short, and without prior knowledge of this man, what do you think he's trying to portray to you?
So when I worked at Blizzard, I had to do a social engineering task where I had to hit customer support, and I had to get 50 questions answered. And let me tell you, I got my questions answered. I shouldn't have. That was the problem. They're not supposed to answer those. And one of the things that I found that was really interesting is people that had been there for 1 year were really, really hard to trick. But people that had been there for 5 years were really easy to trick. What have we learned? We've learned that training is the issue. Everybody that actually worked at the company got training in their first year and then they never got training again. So they became complacent, exactly. The director of CS came and he said, I want the names. And I said, I'm not giving you the names. You're just going to fire those people. And he goes, I'm going to go to your boss. I was like, do it. My boss is like, you got the names? I was like, yeah. And he goes, you going to give them to him? And I was like, no. And he goes, he's not going to give you the names, bud. And then I sat down and I was like, look, I'm not giving you the names because if I did, you'd fire all of these people that are your best employees, the ones that have been here the longest. And in 4 years, you will have the exact same problem with the people that are newbies right now. The issue is not the employees, it's your training regimen. I sat down with him, we created a new 6-month training regimen. And guess what? I went back about a year later, did the same thing. All those people passed with flying colors. Not a single one of them answered my questions.
In all of these posts, PirateSoftware is trying to tell you not only is he good at his job, but he's a master at it. So good he can tell his superiors what's up. And even other superiors are just like, damn, did you know he worked at Blizzard? Better listen to him. When most people describing it would probably be like, yeah, I found some problem and brought it to the head of the company and we had a back and forth that we came to an agreement about. But not Jason. It's all about how good he is, and it gets even worse when we watch this next clip.
Said, why was he training CS to not answer questions? And I said, really surprised how little is known about social engineering in the comments. Social engineering is a branch of hacking centering around obtaining information or encouraging employees to take actions that they otherwise should not. CS was obviously not trained to not answer customer questions. Now imagine this. You know, I'm in the middle of trying to get customer support and they have to work on something. It's like, hey, I'm actually really wondering, I was thinking about applying Blizzard CS and I was wondering, I can't cook. If I do end up getting the job, do you guys have good places to eat around there? Try to get them into a small talk conversation about places in the area that employees generally like to eat. Now, the reason that I would do this is because I have devices like a Proxmark that I can put on my wrist, and I can walk within about 3 feet of you, scan your badge, and clone it. I'm an offensive security specialist. I'm a hacker, and now I know where my targets go during lunch breaks. These are the kinds of questions they shouldn't be answering.
PirateSoftware is 100% trying to make his audience believe he's some super cool and dangerous hacker with his knowledge and skill. He could simply walk past you and discover everything about the company you work for in seconds and ruin your career. It sounds like the beginning of a spy movie. Cody Banks from Wish. It's a really exaggerative way of telling the audience of what he actually did. And that was phishing, seeing if he could get information from phone calls and emails. He's not the next 007, he's just good at being manipulative. And it's not like PirateSoftware doesn't try to live up to that reputation, because when questioned about it, he wasn't backing down like, no, I was just trying to be entertaining on stream. These things did happen, but I just hyped them up. No, he literally runs with the super alpha story he's conjured up when asked about it. Shout out again to Coding Jesus for finding this.
You're a hacker. Like that's where you like kind of started.
Actual hacker.
An actual hacker. Like,
Yes,
not like
yes.
I'm a hacker. No, you're an actual hacker. You've won.
Like an actual hacker.
Yeah,
Yeah, my last job was hacking power plants for the federal government. I worked for the United States Department of Energy.
So
Just
a dude
the
walks in with a
and
laptop and a suit, and you lean over to, who's that guy?
Oh, that's the hacker from the government.
Yeah, that's the hacker.
It's even worse because we go in like 3 to 4 man teams, man. So like we've got a team of
Oh, you
dudes
had a
looking
fleet.
like
You had
this.
like a team of dudes in
It
suits
wasn't just
holding
me.
laptops,
Yeah,
walking into
exactly.
restricted areas. Okay.
And I would like to point out to you guys that this isn't a new thing with PirateSoftware. PirateSoftware has always skirted around the lines of being a degenerate. One of PirateSoftware's first ventures into earning money on the internet was making custom characters going under the name Maldavius Figtree. The custom characters he was selling were typically for furries on an internet roleplay game known as Second Life. He has over 100 personas available for purchase. PirateSoftware claims that he was making anywhere between 8K to 10K a month off of these creations, but even back in 2009, PirateSoftware's ego couldn't be contained. Working on a team, PirateSoftware had began to feel one of his co-workers was beginning to make too much money and decided to cut her off while she was asleep, most likely so that she could have no input and leave Thor in more of a position of power, because there was no other reason for this firing since she was paid by commission, meaning Thor wouldn't be impacted in any way by the artist getting paid. This opened up the floodgates for other Second Life users to come forward with accusations against Thor. Thanks to the Kiwi Farms for finding these. Now, we gotta take these accusations with a grain of salt, but when these floodgates opened, a lot of people were throwing accusations around, and some of the biggest to come from it was accusing PirateSoftware of hiding chat loggers in the walls of Woodbury University, a university in the game of Second Life. However you do that, I don't know. It sounds insane, but that's what they were saying PirateSoftware did, allegedly. Thor was also very controlling over any new creation in the university, allegedly. Thor also planned the destruction of 6 grids, which just means areas created by other users. And funny enough, even back then around 2008 and 9, people were mentioning they feared calling Thor out on his actions because he was talking about his dad working for Blizzard and he had a huge pull in the gaming industry. Don't mess with this man. Did he forget to tell you he's a hacker? Because he's a hacker. Oh, and a genius. Don't forget genius. It's just hilarious to think, even on Second Life, he was bragging about his dad working for Blizzard.
This is the character that everyone's talking about. You'll actually see this posted all over the internet with people trying to use it as some kind of a gotcha against me. Except this character's never been secret. I talk about it all the time on stream, and I usually refer to Second Life, which is where this character resides, as an adult version of Roblox. And this character isn't just used in Second Life either. In fact, I've used it in other games. Kill the Moon is a demo that I never ended up releasing because it kind of sucks. It was fun to build, something kind of a side thing, took us maybe 2 months to do, and it was a good exercise. With that in mind, the allegations that were brought against me were pretty goddamn heavy, but they're also not the first time they've been brought against me. The first time was in August of 2024, where I had to put out this announcement that's still up in the news channel on our Discord. I said apparently some people believe that I ripped off an underage artist 16 years ago. That artist went by Wingless Emoto at the time and is now known as Mameface on Twitter. They were 17 and I was 19 when all of this went down, and no, we never did anything sexual together. We made avatars in Second Life and our work was really popular. And by really popular, I mean we were one of like the top 3 avatar creators at the time. The two of us made about $5,000 to $10,000 US every month doing this. They did all the models and I did all the programming in LSL. This is part of me being a freelancer back in the day before my career really took off. We had a falling out over pay splits and Wingless open sourced our work. Wingless wanted 80-20. Our agreement was 50-50. When I said no, Wingless took all of our stuff, sent it out to the entire world with full permissions, and took the side of just the artists without reaching out to me. These tabloids still exist and people are starting to dig them up now. That's it. This is 20-year-old drama. Now here's the interesting part. Mame and I made up 4 to 5 years later. We've been best friends ever since. You can actually reach out to them to confirm any of this. We've been talking about them coming on stream to stop this tide of idiocy because this isn't the first time.
PirateSoftware is one of the most peculiar cases we've looked at on this channel. We've covered many people with unlikable aspects about them, but it tends to revolve around their actions. And not to say PirateSoftware hasn't done bad things, but with Thor, it's all about his personality and how arrogant he portrays himself as. He's not able to take criticism from anybody, and when pointed out his faults, he will double down. It reminds me a lot of Wings of Redemption. In fact, their stories follow a similar path. Without the weight loss, of course, both believe they're better than they really are, and when confronted with reality, they ban chatters, blame trolls, and burn bridges, all because they refuse to say, "I'm sorry, I messed up." We're all human, we all make mistakes. People will be willing to accept your flaws if you admit to them, and at least try to improve. But what people will call you out on every time is when you try to pretend you're a protagonist of everyone's story, and you forget you're just another person with flaws, just like the rest of us. But that's all for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to go follow Coding Jesus as well. Big shout out to him, and I'll catch you guys next time.